evening and welcome to another episode of The People's Business, where we delve into the pressing issues and dynamic development shaping our societies and economies. I'm your host for this evening, Teshia Hinds, and tonight we're thrilled to explore an exciting new development in Caribbean travel and trade, the Connect Carib Ferry Company. Now, this innovative initiative is set to revolutionize transportation across the Caribbean, creating a crucial commercial and passenger corridor that promises to enhance connectivity and accessibility among our islands. Now, recently, they launched at a press conference right here in Bridgetown, Barbados, and Connect Carib aims to not only facilitate the movement of passengers and vehicles, but also to establish a robust logistics framework for the region's agri, cargo, and commercial sectors. With a vision of connecting up to 18 million potential customers, this ferry service is leveraging cutting-edge technology to promote e-commerce, echoing successful models like Amazon Prime, tailored for the Caribbean specifically. Now, as we embark on this journey, we'll discuss how Connect Carib aims to make all of this a possibility. Joining us tonight are three esteemed guests who are instrumental in this venture. We have with us Richard Alleyne, who is Vice President of Operations with Connect Carib. Good evening to you, Richard. Good to have you with us.
Thank you. Good evening.
Also joining us is His Excellency Ambassador Dr. Andre Thomas, Chairman and CEO of the Pleion Group and Connect Carib. Good evening. Welcome.
It's a pleasure to be with you, Tricia.
And last but certainly not least, Ambassador Alphea Wiggins, Special Envoy to Prime Minister Motley. Wonderful to have you with us as well. Together, we will unpack the intricacies of this initiative and its implications for the Caribbean region. But first, let's take a moment to hear from our sponsors. To the People's Business. We'll get the discussion started with you, Ambassador Wiggins. If you would, please provide us with an overview of the history of shipping in the Caribbean, with particular emphasis on the forthcoming launch of the Connect Carib ferry service. Shipping, of course, as a precursor to what we can expect from this service.
Good night, and thank you very much, Tisha. In terms of the history of regional shipping, we had the federal maple and the federal palm, which were gifted to the Federation by the Canadian government, and they were launched around 1961, and they carried both passengers and cargo. Later in that same year, the federal government established the West Indies Shipping Corporation Act, the WISCO Act, to operate those donated ships. And WISCO, Tisha, was treated as a regional institution, which is a vital part of the regional integration under both Caribbean and CARICOM. But as you are aware, the Federation collapsed. And after that collapse, a regional shipping council was established to manage these two ships. So despite the failure of the Federation, it was felt that these two ships contributed significantly to the development of regional trade, travel, and functional integration in those early 60s and 70s. And I must also say to you, teacher, at a CARICOM intersessional meeting in 2020, our own Prime Minister Motley called for a regionally operated and owned cargo shipping company that can transport agricultural products throughout the member states daily. She emphasized at that time that a maritime bridge is critical to this operation. And as we all know, this was borne out significantly during COVID, where food security and food sovereignty was under threat. So I would say here now that Connect Caribe could be the region's answer to the rebranded Wisco, and perhaps in terms of wider and deeper regional discussions, I'm humbly saying that it could become a full CARICOM agency.
All right. With that said, I want to move over now to Vice President of Operations, Mr. Richard Alleyne, and pose you the question, looking back and looking forward at the same time, what's the operational model for Connect Carib, and how does it aim to integrate various forms of cargo and passenger transport across the Caribbean?
Well, Tish, I must say that first of all, you're quite correct when you said looking back, because I probably would be one of the few persons who actually traveled on the Federal Maple when it was sailing. Now, let me say that eventually we plan to roll out a Caribbean-wide service, which will see us operating about 5 routes. But initially, we are going to be initiating with 2 services. One, a cargo service, which will link Barbados, Trinidad, Guyana, and Suriname. So that will be a dedicated cargo service. But then, interestingly, we are going to have a cruise ferry service. And that service will link Barbados with Martinique, St. Lucia, St. Vincent, Grenada, and Trinidad. And it offers, I think, some very interesting options because I say it from 3 perspectives. One, you can take a trip, say, from one island to another in terms of just being transported to that island. You can do a round trip where you say do the whole cruise just to experience and sample the islands, or you could perhaps do a week trip at one of the destinations and catch the ferry when it comes back again. So I think it offers quite a lot of opportunity for regional travel, regional tourism, and the whole question of regional food security.
Now, we know, of course, intra-regional travel has been really one of those areas that we've really thought about beefing up over the years to make it easier to move around. So for you, Ambassador Thomas, talk to us about the innovative technologies and maybe some of the strategies that you're going to be implementing to ensure that Connect Carib remains a cost-effective and efficient option for both passengers and commercial goods.
Okay, thank you so much. That's a really great question. Uh, Now, one of the things we're doing is that on the cargo side and on the cruise ferry and cargo side, because that particular route that our VP of Operations, Richard, mentioned, that will go from Barbados to Trinidad to Grenada, that particular route, is would also carry cargo as well. Now, in terms of that route, we are developing a customized software that would allow all of our customers, all the travelers, to be able to book their tickets, but also to be able to purchase on board, also to be able to track their luggage, also to be able to choose their routes. So that is being created right now as we speak. And also on the cargo side, at our stakeholders engagement, we revealed a software that's being developed right now with our cargo partners that lead our cargo division. They're part of our consortium company, and the software has been developed to be able to track the movement of cargo and take into account all the uh, all the documentation required to clear goods at each port. And so that's basically what we're doing. Yep. So we're creating two customized, software that on the cruise ferry side will be very intelligent. It will tell folks who need a visa, you need a visa. It will do all of that and actually work well to really serve the service. Yeah.
All right, that's all some very interesting stuff. We're still going to touch on the cost effectiveness a little bit later in terms of keeping it at a pace where Caribbean people, the average Caribbean person, can really use the service. I think that is what's going to be most important. But I want to double back to something that you said, Ambassador Wiggins. You talked about the possibility of the Connect Carib service becoming an agency of CARICOM. What would it take for that to be able to happen?
My suggestion here, this is nothing that the heads of government would be on their agenda as yet. But I'm saying because of the historical aspect of it, in order for Connect Caribe to be effective and to serve CARICOM, just like all the other agencies, Caribbean Export, Caribbean Development Bank, I'm saying that this is a logical step to take. It is only Alphea's suggestion. That's nothing that has been discussed as yet. But in order for Connect Carib to become a CARICOM agency, there are many protocols that would have to be undertaken for that to become a CARICOM agency. And this would have to be discussed at the level of the heads. So they are the ones that would have to follow that agenda in terms of the process that it would have to go through. But I would say that in terms of the legislation within the region, I would think that a lot of the harmonization of legislation between the member states would have to happen, like I said, just as we would have had during World Cup cricket. We then would have to look at the barriers to trade within the region because some of the barriers to trade differ from member state to member state. So if we are looking at all the protocols and the harmonization of legislation, those are the type of things that we would have to look at. And in terms of partnering with private sector, partnering with the private sector is very, very critical and important. So you should be able to set up PPPs within the region where the private sector is fully on board. And again, you have your customs agencies, you have your immigration agencies, so that we have seamless movement between the territories. Because, and this is work that has to be done on the ground before these things can happen. So we're saying that even upgrading our port facilities in various territories, because even Barbados, we are upgrading our port facilities here. So a lot of work has to be done in becoming an agency of CARICOM. But like I said, that has to be discussed at that level. And I'm saying it makes sense to me for that to happen so that Connect Carib would be sustainable and it would definitely serve the member states within the region.
All right, very interesting plan. All of this seems like quite a lot to be done. Now, we heard just a few months ago that the service would be up and running by, I believe, September, was what was said then. I mean, September is just a matter of weeks away. Is this still the timeline for the implementation? And when exactly is the first trip? And that one is for you, Mr. Alleyne.
Well, well, let me say that yes, there is a lot of work that needs to be done, and actually is ongoing at this time. And we are looking at the we moved it back a little, and we're saying the last quarter, but we're actually looking to start operations around the end of November. Bearing in mind, as I said, that there's a lot of work to be done, but there is a lot of work that is already being done. So we're working towards that startup certainly by the end of the year.
All right, I want to step back a little bit and talk about what inspired the creation of Connect Carib in the first place, and take a look at how this aligns with the broader goals of economic development and regional integration here in the Caribbean. I think things like that are equally as important as movement across the Caribbean. So I pose that question to you, Ambassador Thomas.
Okay. Approximately 2 years ago, we actually had a conference. It was a trade and investment conference at the Hilton. And at that particular conference, we had Congressman Green, who is the sponsor of a bipartisan bill called the Nearshoring Bill that seeks to bring manufacturing jobs, U.S. manufacturing jobs from China to the Caribbean and to Latin America, and create a manufacturing economy in in the Caribbean and in Latin America to serve the U.S. Now I mean, that's a significant opportunity for the region. But when we took a deep dive into how that would work for the region, we came up with a massive stumbling block. And the massive stumbling block is that in no one country was all the expertise or all the resources located. And the only way you could make this work was that if you were able to connect the islands. But when you looked at it, the islands were not connected. And then we took another deeper dive in it. And as we took a deeper dive in it, it became very clear from studies that had been done as far as the Department of Commerce, US, many other studies that have been done that we had a look at. It was very clear to us from the studies that if you integrate the Caribbean by maritime logistics network, you would actually create economic growth between 5 to 7% of GDP within 5 years. And it was very clear to us that if we wanted to contribute to the economic development of the Caribbean, then what we had to do was leverage our skill, leverage our ability, and work together with important stakeholders and partners in the region and create this service. So, this is what gave birth to our approach, which is a collaborative partnership approach, and we created a consortium company leveraging the existing skill sets, ability, and experience that is in the region. So we brought together, I mean, Windward Ferries that successfully operated the ferry service. We brought together Rams Logistics that have had a cargo service, the largest cargo service in the region, and they have over 1,000 staff. And we brought together other players in the e-commerce space, in the travel space, and brought them together, leveraging the skill to be able to deliver this service, and then from partnerships across the board to make this happen.
Now, I know that recently you spoke about new partners coming on board with the venture, and at that point, you didn't exactly say who they were. Were those ones you mentioned, those partners you talked about before, or are you now in a position to mention a few of the other partners who you've now brought on board, and can you share exactly how they will be involved?
Okay, there are new partners that we're having very serious discussions with, and unfortunately, we can't. These are publicly traded companies, and they would have to announce the partnership themselves. But safe to say that we are having significant discussions with partnerships that would guarantee the success of the service. Yeah.
All right, we're going to take a break here on the people's business. When we come back, we continue discussing Connect Carib and the coming on stream later this year. Stay with us. Welcome back to this evening's presentation of the People's Business. And of course, we want you to be a part of the discussion as well. So we encourage you to come in with your questions and comments. I understand we already have quite a few calls lined up on the line. So let's get to the telephone lines and bring you in on this conversation. Good evening and welcome. Go right ahead with your presentation.
Yeah, good evening, Teshia, to you on the panel.
Good evening.
Right. My question would be, since we are dealing with the Caribbean, why would we have to get a visa and not a Caribbean passport?
All right, thank you for that question. I believe that will depend where you're going, but I'll toss that question over to you, Ambassador Wiggins.
I didn't hear the question, Teshia.
The caller was asking why you would need to have a visa to travel across the region and not a Caribbean passport.
In terms of, you have to remember that each country in the Caribbean is sovereign. So if a country within the Caribbean says that you require a visa, that is what that country is advocating. So Barbados cannot say that you don't need a visa for country A or country B. If that is the requirement of a particular country, that is the requirement. But I will say to you that in terms of the CARICOM Skills National Certificate, once you have that CARICOM Skills National Certificate, it enables you to travel and work freely within the region.
All right, let's take another call. Good evening, welcome.
Yes. Good evening. After we framed the conversation by the original federal palm, federal memo, that a ferry service that the Caribbean around the time of competition. I'd be interested in knowing whether discuss whether any research has gone into reasons for that original ferry service.
We're having some challenges with that call. The call is breaking up just a bit, so I'm going to ask our technical team to see if they can get that one straightened out just a bit before we go there, because we're losing the essence of what you're saying. So if you'd bear with us and maybe stay on the line or call again, let's see if we can get a clearer connection with you. And until we head back to the telephone line, for you, Mr. Alleyne, how do you envision the ferry service impacting the daily lives of Caribbean citizens and businesses alike?
Well, I am quite sure that once operational, it's going to literally connect the Caribbean. In Scandinavia, you have between Copenhagen and Malmo. That's Copenhagen and Malmo. They've built a bridge between United Kingdom and the European mainland. They were able to do the tunnel. We they do not have that liberty of either of those options. So the only way that we could literally connect the Caribbean is by establishing a maritime highway, and that is what we're going to do now. What that will do is make for a much freer and easier movement of cargo and passengers. It would help to integrate us as a region, and as Ambassador said, it would also help. And I think this is quite an important objective of the service, to build wealth within the Caribbean. So it's not just a question of us just trying to create a service to make money. We are trying to, by building wealth and looking at things like import substitution, more trade of regional produce interregionally and so forth. So at the end of the day, not only the company, not only Barbados, but the entire region is going to benefit from the establishment of this service, and that is our intention.
Well, let's look at Barbados for a minute, Ambassador Thomas. I know that the headquarters are scheduled to be here. We're scheduled to have offices here in Barbados and other countries as well. So, how many people do you intend to employ here in Barbados overall once you get your services up and running?
Okay, I would say in Barbados now, in the first phase, we'll have to employ about 185 people. In fact, just the cruise ferry would need about 85 people to just operate the cruise ferry. Our actual head office here would have at least about 50 to 60 people, and then the cargo ships as well. So that's so in phase one, you're looking about 185 staff in phase one, and then we'll then grow with the other phases because we intend to grow and in total cover 21 countries that would create a market of 18 million people and have them trade with our e-commerce platform and connect them by courier services and just really connect and facilitate agri trade across these 21 countries. Yeah.
I know initially, Ambassador Thomas, you said that you were looking at acquiring 10 vessels. How many have been acquired so far?
Okay.
And are they
Okay.
already here in the Caribbean?
Okay. So one of the strengths of our company and the strengths of our leadership, we decided that from day one that our plans could be adapted by data and our plans could be adapted by partnerships. So, because we were creating a service to serve the region, so we decided that we were going to take time and listen to the stakeholders and the strategic partnerships. So, our initial plan was to get smaller vessels and move them across the region. Smaller vessels that would have about 20 containers and the maximum of say 30 containers. On discussion with stakeholders, on discussion with our new partners, it became clear that if we did that, we will start earlier, but we will not grow as explosively as we could. So we decided to change that plan and rather go for much larger vessels that had greater capacity and start by doing the cargo route and doing the cruise ship route. Example, the cruise ship uh, that we have found would take about 70 containers, 70 20-foot containers. And, uh, and the cargo ship takes a lot. So we changed the plan based on data that we had. And then with our new strategic partners who will announce when those things are firmed up, we've then decided that what we'll do once we've done that, they're going to partner with us and we are going to uh, purchase vessels that allow us, now listen to this very carefully, that allow us to get to each Caribbean country within four, 4 days. So there's a 4 day window that we can get to any country within the region. And so the whole trajectory of our business plan changed once we had extensive consultation with all the major stakeholders in this field. And so we've decided to change the plans. So right now we're going to start with two much larger vessels with larger capacity, and then increase that once we have some other partnerships that are coming online and increase that across the board. So two vessels have been found. Those two vessels would now have to go through the ship inspections. Once they pass the ship inspections, then we'll acquire those vessels. And those vessels will then move from their place and come and head for the region. And it will take about a month for that to happen. So there are quite a number of variables inside, but we're very happy that we um, listened to the data and to the partners and to the need and adapted our plan to better serve the region. Now, initially, with our original plan, it would have taken us about at least 5 years to reach 18 million people. But now with the new plan, we can reach them within 18 months. So it's a big difference.
All right. Well, that's very interesting. And I'd like to bring Mr. Alleyne in on this conversation as well. But if you're best suited to answer, feel free to go right ahead. So, with
Sure.
that goal of connecting 18 million potential customers across the region, what specific markets are you targeting initially? And how then do you plan to expand your reach over time outside of increasing the fleet?
Right. Well, first of all, in terms of the passenger ferry, there's one, the question is said if you wanted just to travel, say, from one location to another. So this is in terms of straight transportation. You suppose you want to get from Barbados to Grenada. That's an option that you have for you. Then, in case you then wanted perhaps to do say a sampling of the islands, so you could do a round trip on the ferry, and then the other side too, and importantly, there are already a number of ferry services operating within the Caribbean, and so we are aware of that. You have the ferry service operating in the Grenadines area. You have the one that runs between Martinique, Dominica, St. Lucia. None of them connect. We are not necessarily trying to put them out or whatever, but what may well happen is that as we touch on areas that they serve, then that connection will be actually established even in a more meaningful manner. Because like right now, for instance, there's not that ease of movement, say, between Barbados and Martinique. We can bridge that gap. But then now, if you want to get, say, from Martinique now to Trinidad, or Martinique to Grenada or St. Vincent, then we can do that. So actually for us, see us actually working not necessarily competitively, but co-competitively with the other services within the region, and that is what is going to build that mass that we need. And the other thing which I'll add, in case we don't get to it, that in the case of the cruise ferry, the vessel that we have selected is going to be quite a nice one. It's going to offer the wide range of, to more or less to suit your pocket. So if you just want an overnight trip to an island, so you can get a cabin that you just take and you go there. On the other hand, if you want to have that full cruise ship experience, we will have that kind of ambience, that kind of service available to you. So on the whole, I think it's going to do a whole lot, as I said, for wealth building within the region, but also for the molding, the gelling together of the Caribbean region.
All right, sounds like it's going to be a wonderful thing to experience. Before we go to break, Ambassador Wiggins, how does the government generally view the launch of Connect Carib in terms of potential impact on things like trade and tourism and cultural exchange within the areas that it will be targeting initially and most certainly across the region? I know you have a finger on the pulse of what's happening in the Southern Caribbean especially.
I think that the government view the launch of Connect Caribbean as a very positive step in terms of assisting inter-regional trade because, like I said, it will benefit farmers substantially. Farmers will have access to a market of 18 million people. You will also be able to, in terms of how the government is seeing it, reduce transportation costs. And as you know, in terms of produce, reaching the end consumer, which is us, transportation costs account for very high markup. So hence the cost to the end user is very high. So when you're going to be able to get our black belly sheep, the meat from Guyana back to Barbados on Connect Carib, you could imagine that you're not only having a high quality product, but it is going to be very cheap for Barbadians. So the cost of food will be reduced because the transportation cost will be reduced. And as I said as well, you have enhanced freshness and quality, because you're able to move from Guyana to Barbados to Suriname to Trinidad in a short turnaround time. So the goods would be fresh and customers will be very happy. You also have diversification of products where you can get various. Take for an example, you get a lot of fruit from Suriname that's not grown here in Barbados, the dragon fruit, and we would be able to bring in a lot of that stuff to Barbados, and they will benefit. And Barbadians as well will be able to get their ginger and their edibles, as it happened years ago from the various St. Vincent, St. Lucia in the Caribbean. So what we are doing now, we are not reinventing the wheel, we are enhancing trade between countries in a very significant fashion. And also, I would say to you, the Barbados government is right now reviewing the trade agreements within the region. So soon from now, you will hear from that officially with the rollout of that. But I can say to you, even going outside of CARICOM, we are engaging northern Brazil. I've been doing a lot of work in northern Brazil, and we are going to be having a lot of agricultural produce from Brazil, and Guyana will be the port in which that produce will be coming into. And guess what? Connect Caribe will be bringing all that food stuff from Guyana to Barbados and to the other regional countries. So I see Connect Carib as a very sustainable venture in terms of enhancing interregional trade in a very big way. And all the governments in the region will be very happy to see the rollout of this ferry.
All right, thank you so much, Ambassador. It's time to take another break. When we come back, we're going to look at maybe some of the unique and specific challenges faced in developing the operational framework for Connect Carib. And of course, we'd love to hear from you as well. You can call us on 228-5562 and 228-5563. So get your calls in. I hope we can get the caller back online who we had challenges with before we went to break last. So try and see if you can get back in, and we're going to take your calls and comments after this. Stay with us. With the goal of connecting 18 million potential customers across the region, we're taking a look at how Connect Carib will be able to institute everything they're hoping to accomplish in the coming months. And of course, we have joining us today Richard Alleyne, Vice President of Operations with Connect Carib, His Excellency Ambassador Dr. Andre Thomas, Chairman and CEO of the Pleion Group and Connect Carib, and Ambassador Alphea Wiggins, Special Envoy to Prime Minister Motley, joining us on this evening's program. It's my understanding we now have a caller from a gentleman who says he is in shipping and he has a few questions and comments. Good evening to you, sir. Welcome.
Good evening. I used to be in shipping, actually. I used to work under the leadership of one of those gentlemen there, Mr. Richard Alleyne. I was signalman in the port for donkey years. So, Mr. Alleyne, you know who is this Lawrence Horn? Hello?
We're here. Go right ahead, sir.
Yeah. I would like to ask these couple of questions. How far north is this ferry going? How far south is it going?
Okay, I'll answer that for you. In terms of the initial routes, the two routes that we're starting with, we're going to go just to, well, as far as Martinique in the north, and that's just about, as you would know, about 200 miles away from us. And then the passenger service goes as far as Trinidad, which is just around 300, and then as far as Guyana, which is about 500. So in terms of the initial routes, it's going to be a fairly tight program, depending on the success of the venture. And so we are then hoping then to go out probably as far as Jamaica, and also possibly Santo Domingo, but those further routes will depend on the success and not only success, but remember that this service is information and statistical driven. So once the demand is there, we will be obviously trying to meet it. And good to hear you, Mr. Horn.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. The other thing, you all will be going as far south as, eventually going as far south as Suriname?
But I wouldn't even say just eventually. That's in the first route, the first cargo route. Basically, sorry, the first route, cargo, dedicated cargo, it actually goes Barbados, Trinidad, Guyana, Suriname. So
Okay.
that's gonna happen like very, very early.
I would like to ask you, Mr. Ali, who will be the local agent?
We haven't decided on that as yet. That is still a decision to be taken. But I know that we have a range of very experienced and good agents to choose from.
As we all know. The last question for you, sir, is if, say, for example, I wanted to go to Guyana and I wanted to take some personal effects, what was the process? I have to get my cargo, my personal effects on the ship's bill of lading. How do I go about doing that? Or I can just put them on board the ship and travel with my personal effects.
But that's the advantage, Mr. Horn, of having the passenger service. As long as you're on a passenger service, we will treat your personal effects as just that. So there really would not be a charge for that. What will change that is when you get to, I don't know, Trinidad or so, and you see a refrigerator that you want to buy, well, then that's no longer a personal effect. But in terms of your personal effects, the advantage that you would experience over the air is that you don't have that limitation in terms of the weight and having to pay extra and things like that.
Yeah. All right, Madam Moderator, I just wanted to reiterate, I work in the signal station as a signalman for many years under the management of Mr. Richard Alleyne. So, and there's a whole lot more about shipping that I can speak about, but for now, I would just leave it there because, you know, other people might want to get in. So I want
for your contribution.
Thank you, Mr. Horn.
Thank you.
Thank you. And, you know, questions from regular people, people who have experience in specific areas alike, who want to know how operations will unfold and how it will impact them generally. I know that your leadership in both the Pleion group and Connect Carib positions you uniquely Ambassador Thomas, at the intersection of business and shipping and trade and all the other things that we have been mentioning. From your perspective, how will this change the way we are able to deliver on business across the region? I know there's much talk about the ease of doing business, the movement of business across the region, people being able to operate. How do you think this will change generally how we're able to function specifically in business across the region?
Okay, thank you, Trisha. That's a great question. I say it's going to be game changing, and we are intentionally designing it to be game changing. Why it's going to be game changing is because if you really look at it from my vantage point, what we're creating is a wealth creation system. So we're creating a system where we're going to create a greater market for Caribbean people. Now, if you look at the figures, the e-commerce figures for the Caribbean are that last year the Caribbean spent 3.5 billion US dollars on e-commerce. That's buying from Amazon, Shane, Alibaba, eBay. This year is projected to be 4 billion. Now, we can capture part of that market. That's 4 billion US dollars leaving the region. Now, some of those goods can be made within the region, can be traded within the region. We're going to give entrepreneurs the opportunity to do that. This is going to be game changing. It has the ability to create thousands of new entrepreneurs that never had any access to the game of wealth creation. I'm using game in terms of a metaphoric term. They never had access to the game. Then we're also going to allow, give people the opportunity to travel and trade at a price that is game changing for them. So this is game changing for the region. That is why we are taking our time. It's too serious a venture for us to be careless with it. It has the ability to change the region for the better and increase wealth distribution, because basically you can have a woman who makes the most amazing jam, but she does not have the financial capital to start a store. But if her jam is exceptional, she can put it on our platform and 10 million people have access to it. And she can trade at a level that is unprecedented. Never had that opportunity. That's what our service is going to create. Agricargo, our service is going to create unprecedented opportunity. If you look at how much the region spends, billions and billions of dollars are spent purchasing grade C products from Miami. Now we can work with the farmers and they can produce grade A and grade B and have our restaurants and hotel purchase them. So it's also going to impact our nutritional uh, levels within the region as well, because we mostly buy grade C products.
Now, Ambassador Wiggins, I know you work a lot with SMEs, with other agencies as well, but for entrepreneurs, what do you think? How do you think this will impact the way they're able to do business? Maybe from their perspective, to hear from you, given that you engage with many of these business people through governments in Suriname and Guyana and so on. Without even talking about a pricing structure, because I know Mr. Thomas has already guaranteed us here on live TV that the prices will be competitive and the small business people and entrepreneurs will most certainly be able to afford it. So, how can this change how they're doing business across the region?
Teacher, you might have been peeking at my diary. Actually, I just returned from Guyana, where I took down a lot of products from small business person, obviously, and had to pay overweight. I took down about 4 boxes of condiments to Guyana. Now, if this ferry were in operation, I would have been able to take down more condiments on board the ferry to Guyana, travel in comfort, and being able to do that trip with ease. So I'm saying to you that ferry is going to make the small business people, like he just said, doing the jams, the condiments, the seasonings, the marinades, they can now get on board the ferry. I can open up the distribution in Guyana and Suriname, and as I said, beyond, even in northern Brazil, for these products to move within the region almost seamlessly. So the Small Business Association Export Barbados, as you know, they have the International Food Science Center at Newton, where the small business persons are actually now able to triple, quadruple their production. And certainly, very shortly, we'll be going back to Guyana, and I'm taking a group of entrepreneurs to Guyana to introduce them to new distribution points in Guyana and Suriname where they can sell their products. So those are the areas that I work in. But of course, you have Jamaica, you have Trinidad, where these products and these small entrepreneurs now realize they can travel. You have the Amazonian products, all the beauty products
We
that people
certainly
get.
can do an entire show on what it will take to facilitate the online shopping and shipping for the Caribbean and how it will benefit SMEs. So we definitely have to plan forward. We're almost out of time, so we have to take another break. But when we come back, we most certainly will wrap up this evening's brief discussion on Connect Carib. Hopefully, we'll be able to get that gentleman in who wanted to share a little earlier because of the poor connectivity. If we don't, though, hopefully we'll be able to get one or two other calls in quickly as well. So stay with us. When we come back, we wrap this evening's presentation.
we are aware that many people are waiting with bated breath to see this service, and I just want to assure you that we are going to land this plane, and we're going to land this plane for the benefit of the Caribbean people and for wealth transfer and wealth creation within the region.
One
Thank you.
sentence. Thank you. One sentence from you, Mr. Alleyne.
Yes, well, what I will say is that through the years, I have been associated and known of the various ferry projects that have been aired. And this is the first one that appears to me as though it will actually come to fruition. And that is why I am so fully committed to it, because I believe it will be benefit not only to regional trade, but to the whole question of regional integration of our peoples.
And from you, Ambassador Wiggins.
Improve regional trade and integration.
All right, beautifully said. I want to thank all of you for joining us for tonight's discussion. It's clear that Connect Carib Ferry Company is poised to be a transformative force in the Caribbean by not only providing a new mode of transportation, but also certainly fostering economic activity and cultural exchange. We didn't even touch on that, connecting islands and people. So again, we want to thank those of you who were able to join us with your questions and comments as well. And we thank our guest this evening, Richard Alleyne, Vice President of Operations, His Excellency Ambassador Dr. Andre Thomas, who is Chairman and CEO of the Pleion Group and Connect Carib, and Ambassador Alphea Wiggins, Special Envoy to Prime Minister Motley. Now, on behalf of the entire team here at CBC, we want to thank you for coming in and sharing with us on tonight's presentation. And we invite you to continue the conversation on social media and share your thoughts on how Connect Carib can impact your community. Until next week, I'm Teshia Hinds. Good evening.